All righty. Well, I think that we are recording. Welcome back to the Coaching Corner. Jason Brooks, and I'm excited to be here with you today. I actually have a new session in mind. We're getting into fall season. Fall season, yes, summer is busy too. I get it. But fall is where the rush really just starts kicking in. And I want to make sure that we cover, ways for us to coach our teams to deliver consistency whenever there's chaos. Because that's what the coaching corner is all about. It's bigger than just us, or better yet, it's making a systematic approach to making things bigger than just us. So let's dive right into it. Now, for today, our conversation. Our conversation is dealing what every leader has ever felt like when their day feels like a big game of whack-a-mole. And the truth, chaos doesn't kill performance. Our reaction to chaos kills our performance. One thing that we can't change, there will always be chaos, things that we can't control, things that spirals the day, the shift, or the event out of what was already planned. The question is, how do we react to it? And today we're going to look at how you can coach in those high stress moments to create calm, confidence, and consistency. So, when operations get hectic, most leaders default to command mode. We start giving rapid fire directions, trying to keep everything from falling apart. That's natural, okay? But it's not sustainable. The more you try to control chaos, the more dependent your team becomes on you to fix it. When your people need and what they need in those moments isn't a commander, it's a coach, someone who slows the storm instead of joins it. When you coach through chaos, you give your team clarity in the middle of confusion. You replace panic with purpose. And that's what consistency really is, not perfection, but predictability. Because consistency builds confidence, but confidence builds performance, and performance builds trust with your clients, your crew, and your brand. Leadership isn't about being calm after the rush. It's about being calm in motion. When you lead that way and your team starts mirroring that same energy, that's when the chaos starts to serve you, not sink you. Now, let's talk about what chaos. Sometimes same mistakes showing up on different days. It's the catering version of Groundhog Day. Same problems, new orders. It's that moment during the lunch rush when confusion hits and suddenly everyone's asking the same question you thought you'd already answered. And then there's the big one, what I call the all roads lead to me syndrome. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Every issue, every decision somehow circles right back to your desk or your phone. Now, here's the truth though, that's not an operational problem, that's a coaching problem. When everything has to run through you, your systems are sending a message. They don't yet trust themselves. The goal isn't to manage every fire that breaks out. The goal, though, is to build a team that can manage heat without burning out. And that's what today is about, learning to coach in a way that turns chaos into capability. So here's the roadmap for today's coaching corner. Three mindset shifts that will completely change the way you lead under pressure, especially in catering operations. Because let's face it, catering is organized chaos by nature. You're managing multiple moving parts, tight deadlines, client expectations, and unpredictable curveballs, often all in the same 60 minutes. The key isn't to eliminate the chaos, it's to coach your team to stay consistent through it. The first shift is what I like to call directive to developmental. That's the one thing about moving from telling people what to do to teaching them how to think. Catering moves fast, so it's tempting to just give orders. But when you start developing thinkers instead of task doers, your team begins to anticipate needs before you say a word. And that's the key to scaling consistency. But the second shift is urgency to clarity. Catering is high speed by default, but speed without direction, it's just noise. Your job as a leader isn't to keep yelling, hurry up. It's to build clarity into every step, prep, pack, load, deliver, and recover. When clarity increases, chaos decreases. And finally, the last mindset shift, accountability to ownership. And accountability says, do your job. Ask Bill Belichick. But ownership says, this is my client, my order, and my standard. When you build ownership into your catering culture, your people stop waiting for permission and start acting like partners. These three shifts are small in words, but massive in impact. They turn chaos into learning, pressure into process, stress into structure. They move you from being the chief problem solver to being the system builder. And that's where real growth begins. So, the very first shift, whenever things get messy, and let's be honest, in catering, that happens daily. Don't front. Our instinct as leaders is to jump in and tell people what to do because that's how we've been programmed. We shift into just get it done mode. But here's the problem with that. Every time you solve that problem for them, you rob them of the chance to learn how to solve it themselves. Let me repeat that. Every time you solve the problem for them, you rob them of the chance to learn how to solve it themselves. Coaching isn't just about giving answers, it's about developing thinkers. This first shift from directive to developmental is about changing your reflex. Ask before you tell, guide instead of fix. I teach something called the AIR model. The AIR model is an acronym. You know, we love acronyms. And it's taught in my second book, Every Team Needs Coaching. And AIR stands for ask, inspire, reinforce. Here's how it looks in real life. Instead of saying, make sure that catering order gets out on time, you might ask, what's your process for ensuring everything's packed before delivery? That question does two things. It makes them think through the system, and it reminds them that there is a system. The next time someone brings you a problem, resist the urge to fix it. Ask, what options have you already considered? When you start leading this way, you stop being the firefighter and start being the architect. That's how you build leaders at every level. And that's the foundation of a coaching culture. Now, for the second shift in chaos, that's when urgency takes over. But clarity wins every time. Think about your busiest catering day. The phones are ringing, deliveries are stacking up, and the prep list is spilling onto a second page. And everyone's moving fast, but not necessarily in the same direction. And you can picture this in your head. That's what urgency looks like. It feels productive, but it's actually costly. Clarity calms people. Confusion creates mistakes. When your team is uncertain, they don't slow down to fix it. They speed up to cover it. That's when small errors become big ones. A missing item, a wrong address, or a delivery that leaves without utensils. So instead of fueling the rush with urgency, coach for clarity. I teach leaders to build what I call clarity loops using 3 C's. These 3 C's are actually on this page: context, checklist, and communication. Context creates calm. Give people the why behind the rush. Checklist creates confidence. When the process is clear, the pressure actually drops. And then communication closes gaps. It keeps everyone updated, especially between prep, load, and delivery. Because urgency, it is contagious. I can't lie. But so is clarity. When your team knows the why, has the how, and knows who to update, they execute faster and make fewer mistakes. Coaching in this moment isn't about slowing the team down. It's about aligning them, because clarity doesn't kill speed. It sustains it. Now, the final mindset shift, the final one is this. First, accountability sounds like control, but ownership feels like pride. And that's the difference between a team that's just performing tasks and one that actually takes personal responsibility for the outcome. In catering, ownership shows up in small but powerful ways. It's the driver who double checks the address without being told to. It's the shift lead who texts the client after the delivery to make sure everything arrived on time. It's the prep cook who catches a missing garnish before it even leaves the kitchen. Accountability says, do your job. Ownership says, this is my order, my guest, my standard. So how do you coach that? You build reflection into your rhythm. Instead of asking, who messed this up? Ask, what can we learn for next time? Sounds corny, but it's true. Because coaching builds reflection habits, and reflection drives results. Because the goal isn't to catch errors, it's to create awareness. When people own outcomes, you stop chasing compliance. Every coaching conversation becomes a confidence deposit. I love that. Confidence deposit. You're not just fixing what went wrong, you're reinforcing what can go right next time. And that's a key step that we often miss. And that's when pride replaces pressure. When your people start leading with that mindset, consistency stops being something you have to enforce and it becomes something that they actually protect. But these 3 mindset shifts, they all sound great. I know they all sound great, but I'm always asked how. No matter what talk, what keynote, what workshop, any kind of rah that you hear from me or from someone else on stage, the question should always be how. How do I apply that to what I do now? Let's hit that on the head. Let's apply this framework. So, how? Coaching for consistency doesn't happen in meetings or after the rush. It happens in the micro moments throughout the day. If you want a culture of consistency, you've got to build it into your rhythm. That's why daily huddles shouldn't just be check-ins. They should be coaching labs. Now, let me back up. Daily huddles right now is a lost art because we always assume everyone knows what to do because they've been working for us for the last 6 months or 6 years. But the daily huddles still needs to be there. And then when they're there, They need to shift to coaching labs, and we use them to remind our teams what success looks like today, to reinforce priorities, and to connect everyone to the why behind the work. Why do we do that? Because we don't have robots working for us yet. We don't have AI working for us yet. And we need to help them clear their personal thoughts that should be there about work, homework, college, social media problems, whatever challenges that they're walking into the shift with. That coaching lab or daily huddle helps to reinforce the priorities and paints what success looks like for today, just the next 4 to 6 hours. A good 5-minute huddle can save you a 5-hour headache. Then there's what happens after the event, post shift or post event recaps. That should become what I call reflection loops, not a venting session, but a quick coaching moment. Ask what worked well. What do we want to tighten up next time? Whenever we start with the positive, on reflecting on the positive of what went well, people start to remember the things that made it go successfully. Every time we just go for the negative, they're just looking to how can I whack the mole faster versus build a system of success. So when you build reflection loops into your operation, you're teaching your team to self-correct before you have to step in. And finally, visual systems. Those checklist order boards or prep trackers, they aren't just operational tools. They're autonomy anchors. I love that too. Autonomy anchors. They allow your team to act confidently even when you're not in the room. When you make these small practices part of your culture, consistency becomes muscle memory. Catering is built on execution, but consistency is built on reflection. You can't improve what you don't debrief. And that's what coaching gives you: rhythm and readiness. A few real world examples. During a high volume lunch rush, I saw this amazing GM, just blew my mind. They paused mid chaos and asked one line: what do you need right now to win the next 15 minutes? That 10-second question changed the energy. The team regrouped, c- their communication sharpened, and they finished the hour stronger than what they started. That's coaching in action. Calm breeds consistency. I watched another GM coach mid rush. Instead of just shouting out orders, she asked each person what their next move was. It took 30 seconds, but the whole kitchen shifted gears. Coaching turns panic into patterns for success. These are all great stories, but to be honest, I want to hear your stories. I want to hear what kind of chaos is showing up in your day. Which of these three mind shifts, directive to developmental, urgency to clarity, or accountability to ownership, which one would make the biggest difference for your team right now? Drop those thoughts in the chat or unmute. Let's coach through a couple of real life examples. Let me switch screens here. And I see a question down below. How do you create a safe space where your team wants to take ownership and learn? I will scream this until my very last day, doing one on ones. Because the question is, how do you create a safe space where your team wants to take ownership and learn? A lot of times in a group setting, have you ever been in that one fourth grade class? And there was always that kid that would just act up. no matter what. The teacher tried to ignore him as much as she could, but he would just act up even more. But then the moment that she actually started setting time aside to listen to that kid, to that student, they actually started leaning in more during open conversations. That's the same thing that happens with your team. The exact same thing. There's a lot of time that the person that speaks the most crazy and you're like, gosh, I just don't want to talk to them because every time I talk to them, they just drive me nuts. But it's because they know that you're ignoring them. When you create that safe space, especially during one-on-ones, that's whenever they know that they're being listened to and they start taking ownership and wanting to learn because they know that they have that voice. So that's the very first place that I would start right there. Start doing one on ones with every person that reports directly to you. Not everyone on your team, just the ones that report directly to you. And that one on one is you listening to them speak versus you having another time frame in order to download more information on them. What are some subtle ways leaders accidentally discourage learning? What are some subtle ways leaders accidentally discourage learning? I'd say, first of all, that they don't ask clarifying questions. We may teach, and we may think we teach really well. We may think we put together a spreadsheet, presentation, the directions for catering order, a new LTO rollout for catering, and we think that they're learning. But one way that we accidentally discourage that is the clarifying questions and the pausing in between chunks and segments in order to ask those clarifying questions. Now, remember, a clarifying question isn't, does anyone have any questions? We all do it. That's not a clarifying question. That is a, I want to move on to the next section cue. That's all that is. A clarifying question is a very specific question about the topic that you just spoke to. And I suggest always 2 to 3 clarifying questions being asked to where people have to speak up. That is not a yes or a no or a are there any questions. But that's one of the accidental ways that leaders discourage learning. What visual systems in particular do you recommend for teams doing catering? What visual systems in particular do you recommend for teams doing catering? The first visual system is a TikTok style version of putting things together. Most brands have this. It's just the action pictures, 6 to 7 pictures of the key things that should be done of how to properly load, how to properly prep, how to properly set up. Those very quick action shots are great visuals for people to learn. And then, of course, a lot of brands these days have the TikTok version style videos. Same thing, about 20 to 40 seconds that really gets into the most important pieces to doing something. But those are some of the best, most up to date visual systems one has. And then one thing that I always love of when it comes down to building goals is having a 3x3 dashboard, and a 3x3 dashboard is knowing what the big goal is, whether that big goal is of course growing catering sales versus last year or last quarter, whatever that goal is, and then having 3 ways of doing that that is affected directly by the team that views that dashboard. So you can have a goal of growing catering sales, but The people viewing that dashboard, if they can't do any of those goals, you might as well have a piece of bubble gum on the wall because they're going to stop paying attention to it at some point. The goals on that dashboard has to speak directly to the people that are viewing it. And for each one of those three goals must be three simple things that they can do to help meet that goal. That's what I call a lead indicators getting to the lag, because we are some historians. We love history. In the restaurant business, we are some history buffs. Why? Because we're always studying what already happened: food, sales, labor. Everything on every single one of those numbers, it already happened, and we just study history. When are we going to stop being historians and start being forecasters? That's where the lead goals come in. Thinking through what are three things that actually leads to that end goal. Those three things have to be the things that the people viewing that board can do. And then again, three ways that they can make those three things happen, each one having three things in their position that they can do to make that goal happen. Then make it trackable. Have it to where they can fill those things in. Have it to where they're the ones that actually go find the information and fill that in for you as the catering director. Either which way, that's one of the best visual things, systems that helps you to make those goals and takes it off of just your shoulders and puts it for you and your team. Last question here. How do I make sure that leaders under me are also utilizing a coaching mindset? How do I make sure that leaders under me are also utilizing a coaching mindset? The very first way you have to do that is that you have to understand what a coaching mindset is. Sounds crazy. We know what a managing mindset is. Managing, having a group of people, follow the systems, hit a certain point by a certain time within a certain budget. You ask anyone what managing is, just about anyone can tell you what that is. Even the bad managers, they can tell you too. There's no such thing as bad managers, but there are. Then you ask them, what is leading? Leading, I get it. Leading, if being a manager is the mayor inside my four walls, leader is the mayor outside the four walls. They're understanding the industry, certain trends, things that are coming down the pipe, or when a challenge is so big, they can help everyone see what that destination should be. And they're like, now I get it. Now I know where we need to go. And this person helped lead us to do it while leaving room for others to paint the brushstrokes with them. They're helping to complete that picture. But you ask someone, what is coaching? There's this donut glaze that goes over their eyeballs. And they're like, and it takes them a while to think about it. So in order to help utilize a coaching mindset, you first have to understand what is the definition of coaching. I spell coaching as three things. There are three actions that make coaching. First one is to observe, not just observe what's wrong, but you observe everything that is going on, the whole picture, the whole event. Second one, after observing, asking open-ended questions. That's when you're asking your drivers, your prep team, your coordinators, asking them open-ended questions, not yes or no. And then the last piece, after observing, asking open-ended questions, is then helping them to get to a suggestion to be 1% better. That's it. If you think about sports coaches do the exact same thing. They will observe their player warming up. They will see how they're doing, where they're moving to, all their movements. Then they'll ask them some open-ended questions. So when you do warm-ups, what is it exactly that you do? Tell me about your eating habits. They will ask open-ended questions, having them think through what's going on. And then that 1% suggestion, not save the planet, not change the world, just 1% to be better. That's coaching. And then you repeat that. So how do we utilize a coaching mindset, understanding that it is those three things outside of managing and leading and having the understanding to keep that in mind throughout the day, because it's not just choosing one or over the other or leaning so much into one mindset over the other. It's asking the question of, what does the situation or person need from me right now? Managing, leading, or coaching. Well, that is the end of today's coaching corner. I do hope I do hope things went well. I hope you got one piece that you can take back to your teams and shift the way that you do success today. Because whenever we can build through the rush, whenever we can actually go beyond the rush and build that confidence within our teams and go through those three mindset shifts, that's where the magic happens. So thank you for joining me. I'll see you on, I believe, November 12th. Any questions, you can always reach out to me at jasonebrooks.com. Hell, shoot me an email, jbrooks at jasonebrooks.com. And don't forget, manage, lead, coach, repeat. Thank you. Have a great afternoon.